Well, hello everyone. Hey friends, how are you all doing? Yeah, it's been quiet. I was wondering what was going on. Why were you guys so quiet? And it's because I'm a klutz. I didn't click the little button. So I've actually been sitting here talking for a half hour, would you believe? Yes, because I'm an idiot. Oh man, that was pathetic. Okay, well I've fired things up now. Let's see. Somebody out there say something. So I know that I'm actually streaming right now. Or maybe you've gotten so accustomed to my silence that you didn't want to say anything. Oh, hello. Oh, it happens all the time, Grim Optimist says. Okay, I set everything up ahead of time and I got it all ready and I had it all lined up and ready to get going. And I hit the button in OBS. It says start streaming. And yeah, I thought, okay, that looks good. I see an image. I see things moving. I even checked on YouTube to see if it worked. And then there is another button I'm supposed to press called Go Live, and I didn't do that. So yeah, I've been babbling for a while. I guess I'll have to start all over again. Yeah, so I made some tea. Look at it's half drunk. It's this stuff, whatever this is. I do not read Chinese, so I don't know. But I made a batch of this, and this one's pretty good. I had some last week that was very very bitter, and I didn't like it very much. But this is nice and mellow. I could drink this again sometime. Yes, and I saw some people left questions and things, and I actually answered them. Oh man, someday I will learn how to do this. That's the dream. So we'll see. Okay. Anyway, to start all over again, um, what I'm up to right now is, uh, okay, it's winter time. This is Minnesota. If I looked outside, oh yeah, I'm looking outside. We got a couple of inches of snow out there, and it doesn't look like it's going away anytime soon. So we've accumulated some snow already. It's going to get just worse and worse, and I hope it doesn't ruin my Thanksgiving plans. I'm planning to go to Wisconsin, about 4 hours away, to spend Thanksgiving with my granddaughter, and incidentally with my daughter and her husband and all that kind of stuff. But if the weather is bad, I won't. We're not insane. Driving in the weather here can get very hazardous. Oh, hi, Rory Katz. Yes, you got here in time because I'm late. I'm very, very late. I'm 45 minutes late. Uh, okay. Rory Katz was busy eating a bird. All right, that's fine. Just so don't eat spiders. That would bother me. Okay, what did I want to talk about today? Well, the reason I called you all here today was, first of all, I kind of need some stress relief because this has been a horrible week. They're all going to be horrible because we're almost to the end of the term, so everybody's overworked. And what made it also particularly horrible is that I'm on a chemistry search committee. So that means extra things I have to do. So we had a big long meeting last night where we went through the list of applicants and we picked a bunch that we'll do phone interviews for. So we got that done, and then yeah, and then we're going to have phone interviews the week after Thanksgiving. Those go on forever. We got 3 sessions scheduled, each one about 3 hours long, on top of all my usual work. So that's made life a little difficult here. So that's coming up. Then also, students, of course, are all stressed out because, hey, what's my grade? Yeah, I keep trying to tell them, don't worry about it. You'll get whatever grade you get. Oh, yeah, how many applicants? Rory Katz asks. Well, it's, what did we get? We got surprisingly few. We got about 25 applicants, I think. Yeah, there have been years when we have received 100 applicants for some jobs, but this was 25, which is manageable. These were all for an organic chemistry position. We are looking for somebody who does organic chemistry, and also preferably, but not required, also preferably does green chemistry. So environmental chemists, that kind of thing. So that's what we're looking for. So we'll be doing a bunch of interviews for that. If you were planning to apply, sorry, it's too late. They're already here. We've already picked our first set of candidates. If they all turn out to be horrible, then we may put out another call, but we hope that's not the case. We hope this is all good. Okay, so that's one thing. Then in cell biology, my students are all doing... Oh, Calesia is in Bellingham and Ocean Shores. Yeah. Oh, I've got family living down in around Ocean Shores, and I like that place. I hope to go again. Although lately it seems the only reason I go there is for funerals. You thought most organic chemists were insane? Oh, well, I kind of think of the physical chemists as being more insane. At least our organic chemists are this close to being biologists and biochemists. But yeah, the others, they're just weird. Anyway, so classes are coming along. My cell biology class, they're all doing projects. So one of the things we do is have them do independent projects in the last few weeks of the class. Those just wrapped up this week. And now I'm yelling at them about how to write up their lab reports, because they have to write a formal lab report following all the rules and doing things and interpreting their data and everything. So that's been keeping me busy. I'm teaching another course in Fundamentals of Genetics, Evolution and Development. And in that course, we are getting to the fun part. We are about to start on the unit that's all about developmental biology. Yay! So I've been talking about some of that developmental biology stuff with them. We're going to be covering some history of embryology, so things like the Hans Driesch experiment, and I'm going to talk about Haeckel. That's today's topic, is we're going to talk about Haeckel. And I have such mixed feelings about him. I really liked a lot of things about Haeckel. He was a smart guy. He was a hardcore atheist. He was kind of the Richard Dawkins of his era. He was probably the premier scientist after Darwin died. But he also was wrong about some things. And that's all anybody remembers about Haeckel anymore is, he was wrong about recapitulation theory. So we're going to cover that difficult topic where, it's kind of important to do, to pay attention to the limits of your evidence and not go bonkers with wild hypotheses that you can't support, which is what Haeckel did. He came up with this hypothesis, one that had already been addressed 50 years before and refuted, and that's mainly what he's known for, because it's his hypothesis, recapitulation theory, ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny, etc. It still echoes throughout the popular science world, and I hate it. So I'm going to try and short circuit that in class today. We'll see how that goes. We'll work on beating it out of the students' heads. Not physically, just we'll talk about all the details. So anyway, yeah, that's today's big project. And it also leads into what I wanted to talk about when I announced this, is evidence. Evidence matters, right? I'm sure this audience agrees. Evidence is critical and it matters. You got to have evidence for what you're saying. And that was the failure that Heckel made, is he essentially invented some evidence that wasn't correct, that was invalid, all to support an invalid theory. So, yeah. Okay. Audis also mentions Heckel at least had a wonderful looking book published, High Science Art, Kunstformen der Natur. Yes, he did some great stuff there. It's a shame that all that anybody remembers about him is the invalid theory that he was pushing. So anyway, evidence. I have been dealing with creationists and Christians. Not all Christians are this way, but the wacky fundagelical Christians, they do this nonsense about evidence. And it's been driving me nuts because I keep getting these comments from people about the evidence for various things. Now, there are people who deal with it very effectively on YouTube, for instance. I kind of like what Pelagia has been doing. Pelagia's topics don't interest me. I know it's terrible to say. I don't care about historical theology, and I don't care about biblical stories, and I don't care about the accuracy of the Bible. And I think mostly it's garbage. But none of that interests me. But what interests me about Pelagia is he often talks about evidence. And what he's doing is addressing a lot of these evangelicals who are claiming to, for instance, have evidence of the resurrection, or evidence that Jesus is God, or even evidence that God exists, stuff like this. And what he does is very effectively address the details of what constitutes evidence in this case. Can you back up that story? And more often than not, the kinds of people who make these claims do not have evidence. Instead, question, how is Pelagia spelled? It's spelled like Paul, Paulogia. Yeah, he's got a lot of stuff on YouTube. He's a very popular YouTuber. But yeah, check him out. Anyway, so they have a bizarre definition of evidence that infuriates me. So to me, and I think to most people, what is evidence? Well, evidence is a body of data and observations that have been made and appropriately evaluated. And what I mean by that, I mean you actually fit them into a framework and you integrate them with prior evidence. You fit the whole story together. It's not evidence if it's inconclusive or it doesn't fit with any known hypothesis. If it's just coming out of left field and doesn't have good context, then it's hard to interpret. Maybe if you get more context, then it can be interpreted as evidence. But what do I find is that many of these evangelicals who declare they have evidence for their conclusion have a different meaning for evidence. And their meaning is, I have an observation that is ambiguous, but that I can twist to fit into supporting my prior assumptions. So they do things like cherry picking. They do things like mangling the evidence. They lie about the evidence. They are all trying very hard to fit that square peg into a round hole of their hypothesis. And it's just terrible stuff. It's embarrassing to people saying, yeah, motivated reasoning is a good example of what they're doing. That they start with their conclusion and then they go fishing for evidence that will fit it. And that evidence may not fit it at all. It may fit better with an alternative hypothesis. But they don't care. They don't recognize the existence of alternative hypotheses. So I've been getting a lot of this lately, and it's just driven me batty. Let me show you one example of something that I've been seeing lately. This is a YouTube channel that I ran across, a terrible YouTube channel, but it's by a British evangelist. He's totally unconvincing, but he's got this weird sing-song voice. He's basically chanting stuff as he goes about it. So let me just play a short, teeny tiny piece of this thing that I thought was insane.
Once you see this, you will never doubt the story of Noah again.
Ron Wyatt. Ron Wyatt. Ron Wyatt.
Ron Wyatt.
Ron Wyatt.
Ronald Wyatt first became obsessed with finding the real Noah's Ark when he saw this at 27 years old in Life magazine.
Oh, yeah. I hope the sound came through on that. And I don't want to make a career of hunting down this weird guy and pursuing him every time he posts something. But what drove me nuts, and it was just so infuriating, is so indicative of the bankruptcy of their reasoning, is his entire story is, okay, somebody saw something that looked like a boat-shaped rock on a mountainside. Therefore, we have proof that Noah's Ark existed. Yeah. Unbelievable, I know. It's terrible. He goes on and on about this. And he's citing Ron Wyatt. I don't know if you guys know who Ron Wyatt is. He died a number of years ago, so he's been fading very fast. Ron Wyatt is a guy with no qualifications whatsoever who called himself an archaeologist and a historian and a scientist. And he saw some photos from NASA that, surveying parts of Turkey. And he found photos that showed this rock formation that looks sort of like, a nice pointy, proud boat. And so he went on trips. He went on expeditions to Turkey and took a look at it and mapped things out and concluded that this was actually Noah's Ark. He has no good evidence for this other than the vague illusion that it's roughly boat-shaped. Oh, also the dimensions sort of fit the dimensions of the ark described in the Bible. But he had to pick a specific definition of what a cubit was in order to make it fit that kind of adjustment of the values of the evidence to make everything fit into his conclusion. So he's doing all this stuff, and he also did other things like he claimed to have found a chariot wheel, an Egyptian chariot wheel in the Red Sea that had been left behind by the Egyptians pursuing the Hebrews across the desert. It had just been sitting there underwater for over 2,000 years, and he said it's still there. Yeah, he found all kinds of religious artifacts. He went looking for the Ark of the Covenant. Just batshit crazy stuff all over the place looking for this stuff. And yet this evangelist was claiming that this was adequate evidence for an extraordinary conclusion. It was just absurd. So he went on and on about this. I'm done with him, don't worry. I know it's a small channel by a weirdo. We could turn this into a cottage industry of just chasing down this what is it, off the curb ministries or something, and pursuing them all over the place. I'm not interested in that. Mainly what I'm interested in is he clearly has some very weak definition of what constitutes evidence. And that's typical. That so often what you find is when they talk about evidence or proof, they found yes, Rory Cass, but has he found Jesus' body? Nope. This is true. He hasn't found Jesus' body, but has he found Jesus' foreskin? That's a thing. So yeah. Anyway, so that kind of set me off. And then the other thing that happened is, all right, I got a subscription to Netflix. I check the Netflix channel, and what does he bring out? What does the channel show me? Right at the top of all my settings. Get ready for this.
Did you know that you were
Yes, he's
picking a
bonkers.
fight with academia? Because there's a lot of people that just don't want to hear this.
You have been at the front of the line for decades, and you exposed me to a lot of these controversial ideas that have now been substantiated.
Well, I'm Graham Hancock. I don't claim to be an archaeologist or a scientist. I am a journalist, and the subject that I'm investigating is human prehistory.
Okay, you get the idea. This apparently has been a hot series on Netflix lately, and I don't see it. Graham Hancock is a loon, just absolutely batty. He's a guy who practices pseudo-archaeology and does all this stuff. Yeah, Joe Rogan. When you use Joe Rogan as one of your recommended sites, where Joe Rogan approves of this, then you know it's garbage, because Joe Rogan is as much of an idiot as Graham Hancock, I'm sorry to say. So anyway, I'm ashamed to admit this, I actually sat down and watched 15 or 20 minutes of Graham Hancock. And it's as bad as I ever thought it would be. It's terrible stuff, where he claims to have found evidence of ancient civilizations. His whole argument is that there was a advanced civilization that emerged immediately after the end of glaciation, roughly 10,000 years ago, and that this is the civilization that founded things like Atlantis and Mu and all that, and that's what then passed on to all subsequent civilizations. It's terrible stuff. And yeah, this is the kind of evidence he was promoting is, hey, he went on a hilltop and there were a bunch of hexagonal shaped volcanic pillars, and therefore he concludes, oh yeah, there was an ancient temple complex built up here tens of thousands of years ago. No, it doesn't show that. The other thing is, if you are so foolish as to watch that show, is it's got all the hallmarks of an old History Channel series. Maybe it came out of History Channel. But it's got all these annoying camera zooms. You know, Graham Hancock is walking across the hillside, and zoom, the camera moves in on him. It rotates as it moves in on him. It's all very distracting. And then further, it's all got these sound effects. Whoosh, as it zooms in on Graham Hancock's stupid face as he's making these insane pronouncements. Yes, I see the comments mention Philomena Kunk. Yeah, I think she's great, because she doesn't take herself seriously. She's making fun of this whole kind of thing. So, yeah. Instead of watching Graham Hancock, I should have watched Philomena Kunk, right? That would have been much, much better. So anyway, again, there's this elision between what is evidence and what's going on in reality. That, you know, he's walking around among these volcanic pillars, which look like typical volcanic pillars. You know, when when basalt solidifies and crystallizes, it tends to split into these interesting hexagonal pillar-shaped things that look roughly like they were carved, but not really, because there's lots of asymmetries and lumps and things. So he's walking among these, and I'm just looking at this saying, but that's geology. That's some really interesting geology. It has nothing to do with an ancient civilization carving these things. So he's taking good evidence, interesting evidence of a genuine geological phenomenon, and he's distorting it to support a bad theory. And this is all Graham Hancock does, is he's one of those ancient astronauts kinds of guys who makes up all this nonsense. And I don't see why he's at all popular, because he's not very charismatic. I mean, I have no illusions that I'm charismatic, but I think I'd make a better program director than Graham Hancock. At least I would be building on actual real phenomena, real evidence, but no, it's just all garbage. So there he is trotting around, and I think he's polluting people's minds. He's distorting their opinions of what the actual history was. Just to complement that as a better palate cleanser than even Philomena Crunk is, he talks a lot about ancient American history and how there was this ancient civilization that came in and all this kind of crap that disparages the actual indigenous history of the country. And what you ought to do is just go talk to Jennifer Raff. She's got this great book called Origins that's all about American prehistory. And that would make such a better series than anything by Graham Hancock. Yet Netflix is probably never going to pick up something like that, because it's too real. It doesn't fit people's desire to see fantasy stuff expressed in a television program. Yeah, so that was infuriating. Another thing that got me annoyed this past week is somebody on Twitter. Twitter still exists. Did you know this? It hasn't imploded yet. There's still people using Twitter. I still get on there every day and take a look at what's going on. But somebody on Twitter addressed me and highlighted this video clip that she thought proves that science was wrong. Except it's a video clip of me. That's kind of embarrassing. And what it was is, y'all remember some years, was it 10 years or so ago, Ray Comfort ambushed me at a conference, and he asked me a bunch of questions, and I tried to answer them honestly and accurately. And what he then did was turn it into one of his movies, quote movies, one of his weird little documentaries where he ambushes people and confronts them with questions, and then they have difficulty asking them. Except I didn't have any difficulty answering his questions, and I had no problem at all with what he was asking. And I actually went at length talking to him about some of this stuff, none of which makes it into the final video. He just cuts it into choppy little bits. But for instance, one of the things he asked me was, can you give me evidence that one kind has ever evolved into another kind? Which is a bogus question right from the beginning, because kinds is not a real thing. That is kinds. Also Berriman, that's not real. Those are creationist terms where they've invented this language to try and force everything into pigeonholes, where you can say, okay, this is a kind, and this is a kind, and this is a kind, where their kinds have no biological relationship to each other. It's, and sometimes they'll say, okay, a kind is kind of like a family, taxonomic family. But it's not good stuff. It's just their garbage invention to fit everything into. Anyway, he asked me to give him evidence of this happening, and I actually did give him some evidence. First of all, I talked about stickleback fish. Stickleback fish are a great example because these are fish. They're highly diverse. There's lots of different forms of sticklebacks, and they also have exhibited multiple patterns of reproductive isolation, and you look at the variations that rise there. They've also got some features that seem to evolve fairly rapidly, so you can actually chart the history of evolution of things like spiky fins and armored scales and so forth. And what does he do? He tells me, well, but they're still fish, right? They're not different. And I tried to say, yeah, they are very different. They're different species. They got different morphological characteristics. This is exactly what you're asking for. And no, he didn't accept that. There were other scientists who were interviewed in this video where he just jumps on them and asks some questions, and they try to answer as well as and honestly as they can. And they gave examples like bacterial evolution. But they're still bacteria. Yeah, therefore that's not evolution. The thing is, that's exactly what evolution is what we were describing. That if you want to observe change over time, in the limited time that we have, we've only had Darwinian evolution for 150 years. If you're trying to do that, well, you're going to be limited in the amount of change you can see. You're not going to see cats transforming into dogs, which is one of his hobby horses, is to ask for that. And even at that, evolutionary biology would not predict that cats would evolve into dogs, or vice versa. That cats had a common ancestor with dogs. They're both members of the carnivora. But no, there was... This is a non-existent thing. It's a silly question. So I answered him. I told him what the answer was. That yeah, we've got multiple examples of speciation, of transformations over time, etc. He doesn't accept that. But at the same time, he's got a version of the word evidence that allows him to say that bananas are evidence that God created the world. It's so dishonest. It is so hypocritical. It's infuriating to see that kind of thing going on. So, yeah, that was another thing that cropped up this week. I'm a very sensitive person, and it's all the time I'm seeing this stuff, and it just drives me wild because I try to deal with it as calmly as I can, but oh well. Let's see. A question. We got a question. Let me check back up. Let's see. Wonder what folks like Ray Comfort and Ken Hovind, how they would react if they were presented with a case against their theology is just as distorted as how they present the sciences. Yeah, I have tried that with creationists. It's a fairly common thing to do to, point this out. And they just take it as evidence that you don't understand Christianity. Whereas their examples, they're evidence that they clearly understand evolution when they don't. So that never works. Yeah, they special plead everything. He says, that's when you tell them that as fish are fish, mammals are mammals, and since humans are accepted as mammals, we are the same as all the rest of the mammals. Stump him with that one. Yeah, I have tried. Yeah, I've also done... One of the things in this particular video that I mentioned is that we're fish, right? We are descended from fish. We still belong to the fish clade. We share a lot of characteristics with vertebrates like fish. He doesn't accept that either. They think that's hilarious. And I just want to tell them, go read some biology, because it's obvious when you look at the biology that they're very similar. Go read Neil Shubin's Your Inner Fish, where he explains it so thoroughly in great details, going into all the anatomical similarities. But yeah. Alaric. There's somebody named Alaric. Are you my son, Alaric? Or are you a different Alaric? My oldest son is named Alaric, so I'm just curious. Okay, but he says, I really want to hear what they put out of context that make it look like you deny science. That was it. I just told you what it was. That the fact that I think that our evidence of the changes in species is evidence of evolutionary history. That's perfectly clear. So how can you tell me that the fact that I believe in speciation is evidence that I deny science? Doesn't work that way. Oh, okay, Alaric. Yeah, I see you're a completely different Alaric. That's fine. Yes, it is a nice name. I named my oldest son after a Visigoth, because that's what he was going to do to my life, was sack it and bring it all down. No, he's a good kid. He's doing well. Not a kid anymore. Now he's an old man out there, and well, relatively speaking. Let's see. Has anybody heard Ray Comfort and his ilk say anything about Pleistocene megafauna? One gets the feeling it's all dinosaurs. I'd love to see a megatherium in the Ark Park. Oh, that's an interesting point. Well, Answers in Genesis has addressed that, because since the Earth is only 6,000 years old, and all the extinct animals were wiped out in the flood about, 4,300 years ago, then yeah, he's fine with saying that dinosaurs and the large mammals that went extinct were part of the big picture. But he's also a showman who wants to make money, and he knows that dinosaurs sell to little kids. That's the reason it's all dinosaurs, because dinosaurs are easy to popularize. But yeah, I agree with you that Megatherium would be a cool one to have. Giant sloths, those would be awesome. Yeah, I still remember when I was at the museum, the Natural History Museum of the Smithsonian, and they've got this beautiful exhibit of fossils all over the place, and walking around a corner and straight into the arms of a giant sloth. Whoa, those things are scary. They're huge, and they got giant claws, and it was all poised standing up with its claws out to embrace you. So yeah, I think those would be awesome. More about those. But no, on the other hand, do I really want them lying about giant sloths? No, I do not. I do not want them pretending that, that giant sloths went extinct in the flood 4,300 years ago. Let's see. Comfort is a guy who's made a career out of not getting it. Yeah, definitely. He never gets it right. Yeah, I've got a talk I've given where I go through some of Comfort's claims. For instance, in one of his books, he claims that scientists think that human men evolved separately from human females. Although the way he phrases it is really weird. It's like humans are men and females are an afterthought who come along thousands of years later. And he says that scientists, he doesn't believe this. He's claiming that scientists believe that thousands of years ago, humans reproduced by splitting down the middle in a process called meiosis. Yeah, he threw in a science term there. Okay. But it just absurd. And then, of course, humans, had to wait around for women to appear that they could mate with. Yes, giant sloths probably ate avocados and lots of other things that are struggling to survive nowadays. Kirk Cameron, he must be stopped. How are you going to stop a force of nature like Kirk Cameron? He's making those amazing movies like the one about saving Christmas. Yeah. Box office gold, every one of them. Uh-huh. Yeah, Kirk Cameron, what's the other I'm forgetting his name. The guy who made the God's Not Dead movies and all that. He's terrible too. Yeah. Let's see, what else? I'm going to have to wrap this up pretty soon. I'm sorry I got started late. I messed up. I forgot about the important magic button I was supposed to push. But I'm going to have to wrap it up soon because I have a class to teach in 20 minutes. I wonder if I'm ready for it. I think I am. Yeah. I don't need much time to review my notes on this one. Yeah, okay, Bruce Cook says, that's the kind of logic my old preachers used to use to rebut evolution. I believed it for the first 32 years of my life. How sad. Yeah, although I got to confess, I was brought up in a liberal Lutheran church, so they didn't have any outright problems with it, and the minister I talked to had no problems with evolution. So I didn't have that deep of a conflict in my early religious upbringing. Yeah. Dinesh. What about Dinesh? Dinesh D'Souza's another liar. Yeah, a con artist. Somebody, and a felon, a convicted felon. So. Rory Cat says that Kirk Cameron got a woman kicked off of a primo job on his TV show when he discovered she posed for Playboy. Oh. Yeah, that's pretty contemptible. Yeah. Kevin, you guys are just bringing up people to infuriate me. Kevin Sorbo. Oh man, he's terrible too. The one saving grace of Kevin Sorbo is that he takes himself so seriously that he's hilarious. I think Sorbo literally believes all the crap he says, and he presents it in such a stupid, deadpan way. It's just, yeah. Me and my kids used to watch Hercules all the time. Yeah. Then and then what was the other one that was on at roughly the same time with Xena? We like Xena. Xena was better, and later it turns out she's free-thinking liberal sort of person. Oh yeah, David A.R. White. That's the guy behind the God's Not Dead movies. He's another one who takes himself very, very seriously and says the most incredibly stupid things. I've never bothered to look, but I've always wondered if David A.R. White actually went to college, because his portrayal of a philosophy classroom in God's Not Dead was so far off the mark. That was... Yes, I agree. Xena was better. I liked Xena. And Xena also had those kind of homosexual vibes. She and her partner, they just seemed like they were much more liberal and more cool about everything. So I enjoyed that. Another person who's back in the news lately that I've been seeing fairly often is Cassandra Peterson. You all know Cassandra Peterson, right? Elvira, yeah. She is hilarious, and she's pretty open-minded. And the thing is, she's always so optimistic and sunny and bubbly, and even though she is in this very goth sort of costume, she was so funny that I actually read her biography and was kind of horrified at what she has gone through in life. The sexual abuse, she was, the casting couch stories, all that sort of stuff. And she's just bounced back from it. She's very resilient, and that kind of impressed me. Oh, yeah. Okay, boomer later. Right, yes. God's Not Dead is a study in how to get asked to resign. Yes, any philosophy professor who kind of tried to pull that kind of stunt would be recognized as not teaching philosophy and actually going contrary to what philosophy would suggest. And they would be asked to get out of there. Just a terrible person. Okay. I hope you're Buster Jangle. I hope you're not saying that God's Net Dead sounds like a great class, because that was terribly awful. That was ridiculous. No philosophy class would be taught that way, unless it was at a Christian Bible college. That's where they would preach certainty in the classroom, when it's contrary to everything philosophy says. Okay, well, I really do need to go. I've got a course in less than 15 minutes I have to teach. I've got it well in hand, so I'm not panicking. But I think I need to sit down and review those notes and make sure I'm prepared. One of the things I like to do in preparing for a class, I go through the entire lecture briefly before the whole thing starts, because that reminds me what I was talking about. It makes it easier to do transitions. You know, those things that professional speakers do, where the entire thing seamlessly flows and all that kind of good stuff. That only happens if you take a moment and think ahead so that you prepare for what you're going to say in the next 5 minutes. Yeah. Oh, Alex says, yeah, I think the biggest problem is that normal deniers of evolution don't get the population part at all. Right. The core of evolutionary biology is population genetics nowadays. Molecular biology is coming up fast, but yeah, you got to understand that it's all derived from the behavior of populations. Charles Darwin understood that perfectly. And the creationists, now that's the one part they cannot grasp ever. Okay, well, thanks everybody for stopping by. I will try to do this again in a few weeks. I will memorize which buttons I'm supposed to click on. I will have it figured out by then. And we'll talk to you all later. And now I'm going to go talk about heckle in the classroom. Oh boy. Okay. Thanks for stopping by. Talk to you all later.